Nissan four-wheel drive vehicles like the Patrol GR and its sister, the new Terrano 2, are built to take hills and slopes like these in their stride. But in order to get the full enjoyment from driving them off-road, you not only need to use them responsibly, but also learn the special techniques necessary to ensure safe and sure driving. Just as important, you also need to know how to go about finding the tracks and byways where off-road techniques can be put into practice. In this program, we're going to look at all these aspects of off-roading, which is why we've picked this perfect off-road weather and why we've come here to the middle of Devon, to the off-road driving school of David Bowyer, one of several such centres across the country. David, hello. What do you do here at the school exactly?
We teach people how to handle their vehicles, their off-road vehicles, in arduous terrain like we have here at the centre. Terrain that they would often find in byways that they would find throughout the country.
Now, I would have thought, training for this wouldn't be as necessary as training for the sort of road conditions I'm used to, with traffic wardens, traffic lights, parking regulations, all sorts of restrictions, speed restrictions and all the rest of it. You've really got to get your wits about you. Here, you're in the open air, you're free to do exactly as you please, surely.
Well, that's right, but it's important for the new owner of the Nissan vehicle to be able to handle the vehicle safely in all conditions, and for themselves and for the vehicle to ensure there's no damage occurs anywhere. So it is important that they learn the correct techniques.
Okay, well, we've got the cars. Where do we start?
In the classroom.
In the classroom. Okay. Slight disappointment in the classroom with all this here.
All part of it.
Never mind. Never mind. Driving off-road starts with an hour-and-a-half session preparing you for every eventuality you might meet off-road. You might have to cope with snow and ice, and there are various aids you can use to extricate your vehicle from the mire should you get well and truly stuck. And just in case you forget the importance of the right tuition, David has a few examples of the potential for mechanical damage.
Do you remember I was telling you always to drive as slowly as you can and as fast as you need? Well, if you don't drive in that sort of fashion, look what can actually happen. These are drive shafts as part of a similar vehicle.
Or that was once one.
It was one, when it was all together in one piece.
Oh.
And that was through somebody perhaps getting it totally wrong and hitting the clutch when they shouldn't have done.
That's fantastic.
Literally ran out of control.
Wow.
Came very rapid down a hill backwards.
Yeah.
So that's a good reason for sort of driving with due care all the time when you're driving off-road.
Special emphasis is placed on the techniques you need to have to be able to drive safely and under control.
Hey, hold on to there. About 40 degrees this way. Slowly down. All we're doing is concentrating on steering. If we put matters right, we'd simply steer off the hill like that. There you are. Now we'll keep that vehicle nice and level. We'll go through this water area. Right, let's climb to the top of the hill now.
Having done the class work, I now know that the first thing to do before going off-road is check the vehicle thoroughly. Now, it's important to look at all the fluid levels, including the radiator coolant, engine oil, brake fluid, and screen wash. And check again, hoses and belts. They've got to be in good order because it could be a bigger problem than usual if one of these fails when you're in the back of beyond. In terms of off-road driving, both this car and its companion vehicle, the Patrol, are what is known as selectable 4x4s. Both vehicles have two drive configurations, two-wheel and four-wheel drive. In four-wheel drive, you also have a choice between high and low gear ratios. In two-wheel drive mode, only the rear-wheel drive is engaged. This is a position for on-road driving in general everyday use. For when on-road driving conditions are treacherous and extra grip is needed, such as in snow and ice, you can move into high-ratio four-wheel drive. Now this position can also be used for loose surface, easygoing tracks. But for off-road driving, where conditions are likely to be difficult, such as muddy, loose or rutted surfaces, or climbing or descending hilly areas, it's the four-wheel drive low-ratio gearing which should be engaged. You can shift from 2 to 4-wheel drive from either a stationary position or on the move at speeds up to 25 miles an hour. To minimize wear and tear, it's better to keep your speed as low as possible when making the change. When changing between high and low four-wheel drive ratios, though, you must always be stationary. Well, we're going to start off-road in the patrol, so I'll go and join David now. Well, this is where we see if I've remembered everything, eh, David?
I'm sure you have, Chris. You drive
Okay.
and passenger you.
Only very slightly nervous about this.
No.
Well, here we go. Now, obviously, when going off-road, one of the first things you check is that the windows are either closed or very nearly closed, because you don't want to lose bits of your anatomy. You don't want bits of brambles and water and stuff coming in the car with you. The other thing is to remember to keep the thumbs out of the way of the spokes of the wheel, because apparently when the wheel kicks, you can actually damage your thumbs quite badly. So, here we go, into neutral. Select low ratio. And with David Bowyer by my side, it's time to go. Here we go.
Well, remember, Chris, we are sticking to the course within the school itself today. But when you are going off-road anywhere else, make sure that you go with at least one other vehicle, because that's very important that in times of trouble you'll have somebody else help you to get out of problems. And when it comes to any difficult terrain, only cross one vehicle at a time.
But here in the school, obviously, that that doesn't apply, because well, I suppose we could always walk back, couldn't we? And get some,
Well,
get
that's
some
right. No problem today.
Now, any special techniques here, David? We've got this huge. I mean, it's like it's like a lake practically ahead of us. What do I do?
Well, I already have checked the depth.
Right.
So if you proceed, Chris, driving
Also
slowly in
slowly.
first gear, just
Right.
slowly as you need. That's fine.
Okay.
Oh, that's absolutely perfect. If you tried and rush the water, should there be rocks or logs within the water, you'd only get caught in them. So that's the way to always drive.
But that water's not too deep. No serious risk to the engine there.
No, not indeed.
Okay.
Now remember, when we're driving, imagine you have a spirit level on the dashboard to try and keep the vehicle level. That way you'll keep the vehicle level across and be quite stable.
Just incidentally, one of the things that David has impressed on me very strongly is that you're not racing against the clock. You actually need to go surprisingly slowly. In fact, you've got a phrase for it that you've used several times since we've met, David. It's
Indeed, a very good phrase to always remember. Always drive as slowly as you can and as fast as you need.
right. Well, that makes sense, because driving against the clock means you're taking risks with yourself and with the vehicle, and of course with the environment. So I think that makes good sense. So which way from here now then?
Well, we
Down here
continue
then?
around to the left here. I think we'll go and do some driving on a side slope just over there.
Okay.
Chris, if you continue on through, over the tarred hump in front, and you'll find it the other side.
The tired hump. Oh, I see. It's got tyres on the top
Tires
of it.
on top. Protects the chassis of,
Right.
of vehicles.
No, there's got to be a technique to getting over the top of that. It's very steep.
Just square to the top. Just keep slightly accelerating and get right onto the very top itself before you stop. Treat it like a seesaw. Keep it going, keep it going. There you are, you're
God,
on the
it's
top.
weird, isn't it? When the bonnet goes right up in the air, you don't know where you're going.
That's it, there's the side slope in front.
Right. Now, what's the technique for this?
Now, as slowly as you can,
Yep.
onto the side slope with the near side wheels just on the underside of those stinging nettles. See how slowly you can drive along there. What you have to bear in mind, steer along with, well, you have to bear in mind that
Oh my
you've
God.
got a high
Are we
centre
going
of
over?
gravity on this vehicle. No, you're not. It's quite safe. But if it did feel unsafe, you would simply steer rapidly downhill to the right
Yep.
to get the front wheels onto level
It
ground.
feels really strange. I feel as if my elbow's going to hit the
No,
ground
that's
any
fine.
second.
As you come off the side slope, down into the water. sudden moves on a side slope like that can cause immense problems.
Right.
So it's important to always drive very slowly and carefully. And if necessary, always take an alternative route,
Yeah.
a route that wouldn't lead you into any danger at all. Now you see those humps in front over there?
Yep.
I think what we'll do in a moment is I'll drive them whilst you get out and watch. If you stop here for a moment,
Okay.
and I think you'll be quite interested from watching from the outside the way the vehicle crosses the humps and the wheels really move. as I
Okay.
pass across.
So you're going to drive?
I'll drive
Fine,
now.
there you
Okay.
What we're seeing here is good axle articulation. It keeps all four wheels in contact with the ground at all times. And of course that allows control and plenty of traction at all times. Now the ability of the vehicle to cope with this next obstacle depends on what's called the approach and departure angles. Too steep a hump and the bumper will prevent you getting over it. And once over it, you've got to be sure that the rear can clear the hump as well, or again you'll get stuck. Now once you've checked that you have the necessary approach and departure angles, then take an approach line which ensures that both front wheels and then the rear wheels will crest the hump together, reducing speed when you crest the hump like that. Experience will tell you what humps you can safely negotiate without getting out of the vehicle. If in doubt, get out and check. Well, we've seen just a little of what the Patrol GR is capable of. Now we're going to put the Nissan Terrano 2 through its paces and take it through some other interesting off-road conditions. See what it's like. Okay, David, in you get. I'm beginning to get a grip on this, I think.
Jolly good, Chris.
I'm certainly enjoying it a lot.
Right, so you'll like this vehicle. You really will. And off we go. That's it. Right, carry on up through there.
Now, we're going to make an attempt on that hill. I've no idea at all from this stage whether we're going to get up or not, but one of the golden rules about hill climbing is always go up what's called the fall line. In other words, a straight line up and down. If you try and climb a hill diagonally, there's always a risk that you'll slide, or worse, that the car will topple over. So, again, you select the highest gear that the engine will stand. I'm going to take, we're already in low ratio, so I'm going to go for low 2, handbrake off, and see, I now need a bit of a run up to it, because if I tried to do a hill start from the bottom, we would just sit there and spin the wheels. So here we go, get a bit of a momentum up, and off we go, and we're going to drop into these ruts, bang, like that, and we're away. Or are we? No, we aren't. A little bit of steering wheel and nothing at all. And what happens when we get stuck on a hill? Quickly into reverse. Feet off everything, and feet clear of the brake. Supposing, I mean, we're actually back down on the level now, David, but supposing higher up, this is a very steep slope, supposing I touched either the brake or the clutch, what would be the effect of that?
Well, you would tend to get out of control, plummet to the bottom, basically.
And of course, if you touch the brakes, if you were on very rocky terrain, I suppose there's always a very slight risk.
You could slip, you could slide sideways.
Yes.
Certainly wouldn't help your straightforward descent backwards.
Right. Okay. So the way to maintain control is let the engine be in gear and let the engine do the braking.
That's absolutely right, as you do when you come downwards.
That was pretty pathetic, wasn't it? I want to get to the top of this hill, so we're going to have another shot at it. I'm going to get in position first. I'm not going to let this hill defeat me. There it is. It's very slippery. I've got a feeling we're not going to make it all the way to the top, but I've got to get as far as we possibly can. Any tips, please, David?
Yes, using third gear will help minimise the
Right.
wheel spin.
Low ratio, third. Right. Let's try. Here we go. And plenty of momentum. And I want to get into those wheel ruts as fast as I can.
That's it.
Right.
Off we go.
Off we go.
Use that steering wheel technique. Yes, and get those steering wheels moving.
We stop into reverse quickly and control descent. There we are. Well, you never know. We might make it this time. I have my doubts. But it's a lot of fun trying, and I'm really quite beginning to enjoy this. It's not fun, this. See, I can see what all the enthusiasm is about. Third gear, low third, and plenty of momentum. And aim into the right.
Give it some beans, Chris, give it some beans.
Full throttle, full throttle.
Keep her going, keep her going. keep that steering wheel on the move, that's it.
Yes,
Yeah,
and we made it.
Go on.
Oh.
Oh, nearly, into reverse.
I don't believe it. Can we not get up from here?
No, you can't, no, because you've lost your momentum. Back down we go.
Oops.
Off the clutch. That's it. That's good. Really good try, that.
We nearly made it.
We
Isn't that
very
it?
nearly
Look at
did.
that, just inches from the top.
Next time?
Next time.
Next
we'll do
time,
it.
right.
No trouble.
Just very slightly faster as we come out those ruts.
Yep.
Just to get a bit of momentum. This is where we need that fast as you can bit. Go on, get a bit of momentum up. That's it. Oh, easily this time.
Are we going to do it? Are we going to do it? Are we going to do it?
Yes, head towards the hedge.
Yay! We did it! Hooray!
Well done.
Brilliant!
Well
Whoops.
done.
Hey, that's
Jolly good.
great.
Right, we stop here. It's fine.
Now I understand exactly the same things apply when you're going forwards down a hill. Never take a diagonal line, because I gather there's always the risk of either the car sliding or, even worse than that, rolling over, and that would be a sort of diagonal roll. Is a horrible thought, isn't it?
You're perfectly correct, Chris. The thing to do is to take a straight line down through the tracks that we have there to give you some steerage. So it's important, as you come over the top, get the front wheels into the ruts there and simply steer with it. The important thing is to keep your foot well clear of the clutch.
Let's see what happens. Okay, and let me see if I can remember the checklist.
Now, as you're going down, just imagine that if the front wheels did start sliding away, just bring a few revs up on the throttle pedal and simply slightly accelerate to the bottom. That'll give you steerage.
So, just to go through the checklist again, make sure that you can see what's in your path right to the bottom. Engage first gear, which I have done. Take your foot off the accelerator. Well, we need to give it a little bit of accelerator to get going. And then off we go.
That's it, steering into the ruts.
No clutch.
No clutch.
No accelerator.
Feet of all the pedals. If she starts to boggan, you could accelerate very slightly, but she's holding very well.
And make sure not to touch the clutch or the accelerator or the brakes, and just keep going in a straight line, straight down the hill.
And she's holding very nicely indeed.
That's great, isn't it? It really does work. It doesn't feel as if it ought to work, but it does.
Very reassuring.
Very tempting to put your foot on the clutch, but that, again, that's just like going backwards. It's a bad mistake to make.
Just drive out at the bottom of the hill.
All right. Oh, there we are. Great.
Good, well done.
Now here is a typical rutted track of the sort that you often encounter, and obviously practice and experience will tell you whether you can deal with this particular thing or not. But of course, if you're in any doubt at all, you walk it first. And, always drive slowly so you're prepared for anything. And the trick is to use the highest possible gear in the low rev range. In fact, I'm having to give it plenty of welly to keep going here. We've got a bit of wheel spin. There we are. I'm in second gear. Keep moving, car. There we are. That's great.
Well, at least we're straddling the ruts there, which would make sure that we wouldn't get stuck in them. That's absolutely
Probably
perfect.
just as well. Whee, it's very slippery here, David. Whoops, we made it. We made it.
Well done.
That's great. Well, hate to admit this, but I think I'm pretty well stuck. Look at that, that's extraordinary. Look, that wheel's dropped right down. Let's have a look at the other side. Yes. So the two opposite corners have been spinning, and look, that one's retracted right up under the car. Well, we are stuck good and proper. And the solution under these particular circumstances is to ask the instructor. David, over to you. Show us how to get out of it.
Well, I think, Chris, you're well and truly cross-axled.
Yeah?
Right, let's jump in and take you out.
Let's have a look. Okay. The answer is reverse out and then, yeah, find a better route. It's one of the reasons why it's sometimes a very good idea to get out and walk the route you're going to drive down. Great, thanks David. Okay, wait for me. Now I've been told that if in doubt when you're off-roading and you see an obstacle, you should approach it straight on, but there is one exception, and that's the ditch, like this one here. In this case, you approach it at a slant, at a diagonal. That way, you only get one wheel in the ditch at any one time. And there you are, you get through safely. Now then, the song may have referred to it as mud, glorious mud, but it can be anything but glorious if you get stuck in it. And the secret here can often be to make sure you've got another four-wheel drive vehicle in the vicinity to pull you out if you get stuck. Now, another tip here is, because it is very wet and very glutinous, very slippery, is to use second or even third gear, because you'll get lower engine speed and less wheel spin. I'm going to take second for this. Right, hang on tight. Here we go. It's going to be a bit bumpy and a bit splashy and a bit mucky and extremely muddy. It helps to give extra traction to spin the wheels sometimes, just to help give the front wheels a little bit of extra traction. And there we are. Slippery, slidey, mucky, but great. Aren't they marvellous, these cars? David, I think one question I was going to ask you was about something which I know is sort of similar to mud, and that's ice and snow. What sort of technique would you use there?
Well, for ice and snow driving, you would in fact be up into high ratio, because you'd be normally on the normal road, and you'd use the highest gear with the least number of revs, so not to actually spin the wheels.
And I've heard somewhere that it can pay to... what about sand? I mean, sand can be very tricky. I know from experience. I was with someone once, a four-wheel drive vehicle, on the beach, and we were really struggling.
Well, certainly with sand, and in particular dune driving, you'd need to, for a start, lower the tyre pressures. That will help an enormous amount. The same applies again. Try and drive in the highest possible gear within high or low ratio to try and minimise the wheel spin. Stay on the top and keep moving.
Do you need
through.
to go quite fast to stay on the top of
Yes,
the sand,
indeed.
or slowly?
Keep fast, keep across the top, so as you don't actually bury yourself in.
Okay.
That's the technique there.
Where should we go next?
Over there.
Okay. Well, water is an altogether different sort of hazard. The problem with water is that you can't tell by looking at it whether the bottom is just under the surface, as it is now, or 6 feet below the surface. What's more, there's no way of telling what the bottom is made of. Is it sand or mud or gravel or what? And is it full of holes, for example? And then again, you don't know if there's a submerged rock or a tree stump or something which might damage your car. The only solution to all that is to stop before you go in the water and walk through. You can wade through if you need to and take a stick and just poke around and make sure that the water doesn't get too deep for your particular off-road vehicle. We haven't done that here, obviously, David, because this is your this is your private course, and so I assume you kind of know your way around here.
I can assure you, no, we've left traps under the water. And what is more important, we're driving at the right sort of speed, and we're sticking to that same phrase of ours, driving as slowly as you need, and that way you won't get led into trouble.
Pushing up a bit of a bow wave, it's worth keeping the revs up. I think you'd choose a lower gear, wouldn't you, just to make sure there was no risk of any water getting into the exhaust pipe, just to make sure there was the right balance of compression there. There we are.
Yeah, yes indeed.
Safe and sound. Now this is a particularly interesting piece of terrain. It's the washed out gully. There's no actual flat surface at all. It's just like a V-shaped channel almost. What's the advice here, David?
Well, I would suggest that If you come across a gully like this that looks difficult, having walked it, always have somebody go in front and beckon you through.
All right, to make sure you keep on the
Yes, because they've got a better idea of seeing you go through.
Okay, first, second gear? What
in
do you
first
think?
gear and slowly through,
Right.
and keep the vehicle level across.
Okay. Oh, no, isn't that interesting?
Well, perhaps a little more level than that next time. That's okay.
Okay, that's
And over we
fine.
go.
Right. The characteristics of four-wheel drive make it ideal for towing, and you can have a tow bar attachment fitted to your Patrol or your Terrano 2 very easily, and you could tow a boat or a caravan or indeed a horse box out of typical conditions like these, a wet grassy field. Let me show you. Make sure you're in low ratio, and then always start off in first gear, and then start off gently, and as you build up speed, then just ease it into second gear. About 15 miles an hour is about your limit in these conditions. Gently over the humps, of course. And again, always choose the highest gear that will give you plenty of traction and not too much wheel spin. Yeah. Second. I am well and truly stuck. I hate to admit it. I am stuck. God, look at this. I mean, that's seriously stuck, isn't it? Cool. Yuck. Well, this may well turn into a job for international rescue, but luckily we've got alternative expert help on hand. David's here. Come through, David. This technique uses the special properties of a particular kind of rope. It's called a kinetic energy recovery rope, and it uses its own elasticity to overcome the inertia of the stuck vehicle. It has a braking strain of 12 tons. Here's how it works. Okay, David, back you come. Obviously, we don't want his tyres to go into the ruts I made, so he's straddling this right-hand rut. Over a little bit, David. That way a little bit. That way a bit. That's great. Let me just check the front wheels. You're all right. Keep coming back straight on that line. Back you come. Oops. Just lost the front, I think. Come back a bit further, see if you can get out of it. Oops.
Well, I'll try from there.
All right. Well done. I think that's about as far back as you want to come, isn't it?
Yes, no
Yeah.
further. It's
Okay.
quite muddy, isn't it? Right, let's get the rope out. Door closed.
Now, I know one important rule here is to attach this rope to a strong point on the vehicle. I mean, a towing board is ideal, or one of those little towing eyes, but no hooking it onto a bump or a door handle. That's fatal.
There, I'm laying the rope so it doesn't get knotted as I pull off. They are on a solid point there.
Right.
There you are now.
All set?
As I drive off, I'll blow the horn. Will you please be in reverse gear, ready to come with me?
Okay.
And make sure the handbrake's off.
Right.
Make sure your window's wound up too.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of gadgets in off-roading, but I reckon that is just about the best of them. It's terrific, isn't it, eh? Well done, David. There we are. It's nearly time to go and find out how and where to put all this newfound skill into practice. A couple of points before we finish. When you've finished off-roading and you're back on terra firma, remember to stop the vehicle and switch from low ratio into high ratio, either four-wheel drive or two-wheel drive, depending on the conditions. And when you switch between 4 and 2, remember, once you've switched into 2, again with the car stationary, reverse for a few meters to make sure any front hubs are disengaged. The other very important point is to pressure wash the car, get the mud and muck off the bodywork and the chassis because they cause a lot of corrosion. That's it. Time to say goodbye to our host. David, thank you very, very much for all your expert help. Now, for anybody who might be thinking of going and doing a bit of serious off-roading, have you got a sort of final tip to pass on?
Well, I would recommend that they go to an off-road school like ourselves. There are several actually approved off-road schools around the country where they learn the finer arts of off-road driving, especially as regards the safety aspect, so that they don't endanger themselves or their vehicle.
Great. Well, that is something you've stressed very strongly over the time we've spent with you, but I've enjoyed it enormously. In fact, I could say I may well be bitten by the bug, and thanks to you, David Bowyer.
Jolly good.
Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to clean that vehicle before you go.
Oh, clean the vehicle. I thought there might be something like that. Okay. Once you've mastered the basic techniques and skills of off-roading, you obviously want to put them into practice yourself. But where can you go to do that? It's astonishing but true that every inch of the British Isles is owned or controlled by someone, even so-called common land. So how do you go about finding the routes in your area where you can put the techniques you've learned into practice without breaking the law or harming the environment? I don't know the answer, but I'm off to find someone who does. I'm on my way to meet Liz Hurley. She's the National Rights of Way Officer for the All-Wheel Drive Club. That's Britain's longest established off-road club. They've got about 4,000 members. There she is. Hi, Liz.
Hello.
Oh, very nice to see you again.
And you.
First of all, I think a lot of people will be very interested to know, what is the All-Wheel Drive Club?
The All-Wheel Drive Club is a club that was set up about 25 years ago to provide a focus and a forum for people with four-wheel drive vehicles to get together and talk about like-minded things.
You read in the paper sometimes that some people do get concerned about the effect that these four-wheel drive vehicles could have on the countryside. Ecology is an issue these days. Does your club get involved with that?
Oh yes, certainly. We know that we've got to be responsible users of the countryside, and we try to encourage our membership and other people who aren't affiliated to us to behave responsibly when they're out in the countryside. It is somebody else's workplace, and it's also the habitat of a lot of wildlife. And we know that we've got to show a more ecology-minded attitude towards the countryside.
So basically, where can you go with a four-wheel drive vehicle?
You are limited to where you can go. People think that you have hundreds and hundreds of miles you can just go to, but there's only 5,000 miles of rights of way in the whole of the country where you can legally take a vehicle out of a total of 120,000. So it's a very small percentage in actual fact.
How do you find out where they are?
There are set laws governing vehicle rights of way, and these are recorded on something called the definitive map that a county councils have to maintain. And you can also find them on the Ordnance Survey maps, but the Ordnance Survey maps need to be looked at alongside the definitive maps to actually get your true picture of which vehicle rights of way you can use.
Well, can we have a look at, you've got a couple there of the local area that we're going to now.
These are Pathfinder maps and Land Ranger maps. And one is a much bigger scale than the other. The Pathfinder will show you the field boundaries. So if you're in an area that you don't know, they're very handy because you can tell exactly where you are. And the pink Land Ranger one is the one that most people would carry around in their vehicles because it shows all the main roads in a bigger area of a county.
Okay.
And if you have a look inside the maps, you find that there's a key guide for all the information on the map, and halfway down you find public rights of way.
Oh, yes.
And that shows you your footpaths, your bridleways, your roads used as public paths, and your byways open to all traffic. Byways are proven vehicle rights of way, and so you can pick those out quite easily by their markings on a map, and you can go and drive those without fear. You're not necessarily going to be able to get down them though, that's one thing to always remember. A road used as a public path is one that is a little bit of a grey area because some carry vehicle rights and some don't. And the only way you'll be able to work out which is to cross-reference this map with the definitive map.
It's not completely straightforward, is it?
It's not completely straightforward, which is why some people probably can't be bothered to go and do it, but it's a very simple and easy task. You highlight your map, you go to a county council office or to a district council office, and you ask in the highways department to see the definitive map. And the staff there will show you the area that you want to go to and can point out the markings on the map to look for, because unfortunately they are different than the ones on the Ordnance Survey maps. Yes.
But they're usually pretty helpful.
They're very helpful as a general rule, yes.
They'll sort of take you through.
They'd rather you had a look and know where you are legally entitled to go than to have somebody go and drive what looks like a track and find you're on private access.
Are they usually signposted? I know footpaths are often signposted in the country. Do these things have signposts as well?
It's becoming more widespread now. Some councils are very good and there are lots of byway signs within their county. But some of them, up till now, have tended to not sign them because then it kept the conflict down a little bit. But as there is such a small percentage of people who actually go green laning, as we call it, the councils have discovered by correctly signing, it actually makes life easier for people from not trespassing at wrong tracks and for keeping to the rights of way.
Well, show me very quickly on the map where we're going today. I know you've been doing some homework. You've been to County Hall.
I've been down to the County Hall and I've had a look at the definitive map, and I've highlighted the ones that carry vehicular rights. And we're going to start off here and we're going to head up the hill and along the top. And there are some fantastic views along the top of this old Roman road. It used to be a straight through route all the way across the country, and you'll find that it's still very good condition considering the amount of people who use it, as well as the farmers who have to use it for getting in and out of their land as well.
But it still demands four-wheel drive vehicle.
You can actually get up there in your four-wheel drive vehicle without having to put it in four-wheel drive, but I wouldn't want to go up it in a car.
I'm with you, okay.
You need the extra bit of ground clearance.
Great, okay, well, lead me to it.
All right, I'll go with you and then John can follow on in the other vehicle, or
Okay.
lead us, whichever he wishes to do.
I think he probably better lead us, hadn't he?
Right.
It'd be very interesting to see what you get in reality when you've had a look at the map. That must be a lot of the fun of this, I should think.
It's quite a surprise sometimes because unless you can actually read a map very well, you don't understand the contours and the markings
yes,
on it.
Yes.
And I don't know if you noticed, one of the ones I pointed out with beautiful views had lots of brown lines quite closely interwoven.
Right, so that means steep slopes, doesn't it?
Steep slopes, and they were going in and out like ripples on sand after the tide's gone out, which means that it's going to be a fantastic view across the valley.
Right.
And you'll be riding the ridge above, although the valley's looking a little bit hazy from the heat haze. And you're clear this side.
Thank you.
When you go down the road a little ways, you're going to come around this curve and see a house on your right-hand side.
Okay.
And we turn right at the far end of their garden by the big tree.
Okay.
Beautiful bird song.
Isn't it lovely?
And we actually go up between an avenue of trees here. And I'd make sure that you're in four-wheel drive at the bottom because
I see why. Yes, it is quite muddy, isn't it?
It's only the bottom bit where the water's come down and then congregated on the lip. But as you go up, it'll get drier. You also get a lot of horses using this track, which is why it is a little bit rutted as it is. Because
I can see John bumping up and down. Yes, like a washboard, isn't it?
That's right. You get them called cattle steps.
So that's slow down a bit.
You need to take it nice and gently, but just keep a gentle motion going.
They're slightly stuck.
You need to keep your momentum. Okay. Put it into low box second. Right, stop.
There we are.
That's it. Keep it nice and gentle. The trouble is if you go at it too fast, you sometimes bounce and then you lose your momentum.
Yes.
You can tell here though that even though it looks quite muddy on the surface, it's only very shallow, and a lot of that is where the horses use it a lot, and they tend to just nibble at the top earth.
Are we likely to see any other users around here, do you think?
This is a track that is well used, but on the majority of occasions that I've used this one, we've never encountered anybody other than an odd walker who's come from where we were with the picnic area earlier on, and they've come up here to exercise their dogs. It's a nice stony track now, and you can see how it used to be a road. You can tell that it was what we call a metalled surface, although it's got nothing to do with metal whatsoever.
No, it was. You mean it would have been a hardtop road, like a tarmac road?
It would have been. It is a Roman stone road,
right.
And you can tell how wide it used to be by the hedges on either side, and it does become a little bit overgrown in the spring from the vegetation. But once you get clear of this.
And the sort of people we might meet up here would be ramblers. You've talked about people walking, and you've talked about people on horseback, so those sort of people.
That's right.
What happens if you meet another off-roader who's coming the other way?
Well, one of you has to reverse up until you can find a space close, easy enough for both of you to pass, because we don't need to actually have a firm surface for us to pass each other. We can just go up the bank a little bit, both of us, and you can get round easily that way.
Yes.
But for horses, we would pull off the track as far as possible, stop and switch off our engines,
yes.
Wait for the horses to go clear of us, and then set off again. Right. It's courtesy only. On a lot of the roads that we use, the green lanes, they're old Roman roads of 20, 30 foot width, so you can pass each other quite happily. But on one like this, where it's a little bit narrow, then obviously it's good manners to stop and let them pass. You might also meet some people on mountain bikes, because although mountain bikes can use bridleways, they tend to use the vehicle rights of way because they're wider, more open, and
yes.
tend to be a harder surface.
Yes.
They're not allowed to use footpaths though. But they are becoming more popular these days, and a lot of people use off-road vehicles to get out into the countryside and maybe go for a cycle down routes that they can't take their vehicles down.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting.
So,
I hadn't thought of that as an option. So
there's
you
lots
put
of ways
put the
around
bike
it.
on the car. Now, you mentioned the sort of tackle you had with you when you had the branch of a tree blocking your route. It took two vehicles to pull it out of the way. And that's the winch, obviously. But what other sort of odds and ends do you have to take out with you?
We usually carry a minimum of stuff, a rope for one, and a few bits of tools and things. But John's going to let us have a look probably at what he's got in the boot while we stop and have a look at this fantastic view that we've got.
Oh, it looks as if you stopped anyway. Let's seize the opportunity. Well, I see what you mean about the view. It's fantastic.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, Liz said you would just have a look at the tools you carry around with you when you go off-road. It's going to be very interesting to see them. My goodness, it's quite a kit, isn't it?
You need to keep it in something to stop it rolling around in the back, which is
Yeah.
why it probably looks more, because it's all in stackets. But you've got a sleeping bag should you ever get caught out, a kinetic rope which makes recovery a lot easier, a nice little fold down shovel should you also need one of those. We usually try and carry a fire extinguisher.
That's very wise.
Very jump leads, because again if your engine should get wet you often need to jump one another, and a slightly longer rope so that you don't both end up in a muddy section. You can do it from longer distance.
Okay.
We have a little pump so that should you have a flat or a soft tyre you can always pump it back up again to get you off the road, which also has a light in it. And in here we've just got a strap which you would possibly use if you had to put something round a stout tree to try and recover yourself rather than a ropes, because it doesn't cut in.
Right.
And just a couple of shackles to join your ropes together, and some work gloves, because you should always use gloves when using ropes and when you're using straps so that you don't get your hands caught.
Right.
The glove can catch and not you.
And a pair of wellies, of course.
And the proverbial wellies.
Very green wellies. So you're more or less covered against virtually any contingency, aren't you?
Right.
You should
even,
be.
Even getting so stuck that you had to spend the night there.
That's right.
Yeah. But you would never ever go out on your own. That's rule number one. You should always go out in a minimum of 2.
That's an absolute rule, is
and
it?
a maximum of 4, or
Right.
4 is what we suggest.
Yeah.
But if you were to fall and break a leg on your own, you'd be
You're
there
stranded,
till
yes, of
somebody
course.
else found
Yes,
you, really.
yes.
Whereas with 2 of you, at least one can always go for help.
Right. Great. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Terrific.
Right, we'll carry on down here.
Okay.
There's a maze of tracks in this area, Liz. Now I know that you know this place like the back of your hand. I mean, it's very unlikely you get lost here. But supposing we were up here as, strangers, how would we find our way around?
It's very important that you do actually stay to the rights of way within Army land, and really a compass is the most important piece of kit that you can have up here. Just a simple pocket compass and a little bit of knowledge on how to use it.
And you can use it flat down on the map to get your bearings, or you can,
yeah.
I suppose you can take a bearing of a prominent point. Now this is very pretty, Liz. Is this a byway or a road used as a public path?
This is actually a byway. There was a sign at the bottom which was a bit hidden in the bushes, and you can tell it's quite a firm surface track. There are quite a lot of branches overhanging down here, which you do need to report any obstruction to the county council. Things like overhanging bushes, branches hanging a bit low that might damage a vehicle or knock a horse rider, because of course a horse rider is higher than you are.
So you have the right to complain about things like that as a user, and are they duty bound to come and fix it?
Yes, it is the county council's responsibility to maintain the public's access to these tracks. But the thing to remember is that you must keep to the track. You can't just go off into the woods through entranceways like these, because these aren't part of the right of way.
Oh, I see.
You must keep to the defined track. It's the only place you have a legal right to be.
So what happens if you see somewhere, a little dingly dell, I thought would be a very nice picnic spot in the summer, if I was out with my family, that's not on?
No, you're not allowed to actually drive off the right of way. And to be technically correct, you're not actually supposed to drive and picnic. You're supposed to pass and repass. But of course, the letter of the law is wavered a little bit there to allow you to enjoy the countryside to its fullest.
Provided, obviously, you take the sort of normal common sense precautions and treat the place like the countryside deserves to be treated.
That's right. We all want to be able to get out of the cities and out into the countryside to be able to enjoy it. And the only way we can all do that on such a small island is to be able to share the countryside.
Maintain the momentum, I think that's the idea here, isn't it? We don't want to stop here.
No, you just need to let it keep trickling up the hill.
It's quite slippery.
Yes, the soil is gets very waxy when it's damp.
This particular soil.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's got a touch of clay in it. And also that's the sort of thing you've got to be careful of, where trees have been felled and the stumps have just been left on the side of the road sticking out.
Yes.
When the undergrowth gets high, it's surprising how difficult they are to see.
Interesting bit. Sea daisy.
The thing to remember in the ruts like this is to keep your thumbs out of the wheel.
Oh yes, I know. David said that. One does forget, but because you do get kicked by the spokes sometimes.
You certainly do, and it can break your thumbs if you're not careful.
It's a mucky bit.
Yes, this piece doesn't get much of the sunlight down onto it, so of course it doesn't get dried out.
All right. Oh, it's lovely. Yeah. Real mud, that is.
Certainly is. Let go of your wheel. Let it find itself in the rut.
Right.
That's it. Let it kick. That's it. Just keep it going. Let it pick its own route. You'll do. That's it. Just let it take its own course. That's it. Lovely. Brilliant. Good. The vehicle will stay in the ruts if you let it.
Right.
If you try and oversteer, then you kick out of the rut.
I was trying to straddle a little bit there.
That's
but
right.
obviously
You
that was
can't
not...
do that. When your wheels are in the ruts, you've actually got to just let go of the wheel, let your wheel centre, and just go with it. And just gently keep your pressure on as you did. That was very good driven.
Well, Liz, it's almost come time for the parting of the ways, I'm sorry to say, but before we do part company, have you any sort of final hints to pass on?
I think really we've gone through everything about what to do. It's what not to do. Don't use lanes that aren't going to naturally recover when the rains have stopped. Try not to go into lanes that you know are going to be very wet. They are for the enjoyment of everybody, and we don't want to ruin them during the winter weather. If you should need to go into a lane and you do get stuck, make sure that you always use adequate protection. If you have to do self-recovery, make sure you put things round trees to protect the barks and things like that. Don't go off the right-of-way, stay within the confines of it, otherwise, you know, you can be trespassing. But really, it's just common sense.
It's a shame to end on a negative note. It does sound like an awful lot of don'ts. I know it's good sound advice, but it's you know, I don't want us to part company with a lot of sort of don't do this, don't do that. There's a positive side to this as well, of course, isn't there?
Oh yeah, green laning is a very enjoyable, lots of fun can be had while you're out green laning. But as we mentioned at the beginning, it is a very contentious issue with a lot of people. The countryside is for everybody's pleasure and enjoyment. It is the only way that a lot of us get out to see the countryside, and we don't want to ruin it and jeopardise it for everybody else. So a few don'ts make it more sense for all the pleasure that you're going to get from the do's.
Sound words indeed. Liz, thank you very much for your advice.
My pleasure.
As an owner of a Patrol GR or Terrano 2, you have a versatile vehicle which will give you many hours of pleasure and enjoyment off-road. We've tried to give you some idea of the methods and techniques to use when you take the plunge. But this video will never be a substitute for one-to-one tuition, and you can get that from your local off-road centre and more information from the All-Wheel Drive Club. But whatever you do, drive thoughtfully and carefully. Goodbye. Okay, Liz, off we go. For further information on off-road training courses or equipment featured in this programme, you can contact David Bowyer at David Bowyer's Off-Road Centre, Zeal Monacorum, Crediton, Devon, EX17 6DH. His telephone number is 0363 826 66, or you can send him a fax, 0363 827 82. And for more information about the All-Wheel Drive Club, you can get in touch with Liz Hurley at the All-Wheel Drive Club, 109 Winsbury View, Marksbury, Bath, BA2 9HP. The telephone number there is 0761 471159. Or for more information on rights of way issues, contact, again, Liz Hurley. She's the rights of way editor of International Off-Roader magazine. Their address is P.O. Box 237, Crawley, West Sussex, RH10 5YH. The telephone number is 0293 525152, and their fax number is 0293 538253. We hope you've enjoyed this brief excursion off-road with me. Now it's down to you. You have the vehicle, and with the right help and the right training, you can enjoy the off-road experience for yourself.